Hello, and welcome along to a very special episode of the Snack Break podcast, the first episode of our brand new special series, The New Whovian, in which a newly indoctrinated Doctor Who fan discusses some of the latest episodes of the hit sci-fi show. Today, it's a bit of a different one for many reasons. I am recording away from home, so things might sound a little bit different. I'm sort of sitting amidst a weird little shelf at the moment with a Charles Dickens-esque light shining onto my notes. Today we're going to be discussing the Robot Revolution, the brand new episode 1 of season 2, or series 41, or series 15? Not 15, it's more than that. But it is a number nonetheless. Whatever you want to call it, it is the brand new opening episode of the brand new season. So, it's a pretty strong opener for Belinda Chandra, who is the brand new companion. Don't know if you heard about this, but we're getting a brand new companion. Yeah, you probably knew by now. We get just enough of Belinda's life prior to the Doctor's arrival to scratch by, before the inevitable arrival of the robots. Now, the robots look very, very cool. The design is definitely that 50s retro vibe. Russell said he wasn't initially going for that, but I think that will blend very nicely into episode 2, and the entire episode almost has this retro sci-fi 50s aesthetic that actually blends quite nicely with a lot of the more modern contemporary issues that are discussed in this episode. I have to say, I was a little annoyed by Belinda's reaction to the robots. Although I get that she is going to be a very different companion to Ruby, and she's a little bit more happy to sort of snap back at the Doctor. It's certainly going to be a lot more tension there, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I just felt like in a scenario in which your home has just been invaded by massive red robots and they've killed the cat, or literally just called the cat for no apparent reason. You killed the cat! What? Awful. I feel you'd be screaming, or at least showing a bit more panic than occasionally delivering the odd snarky comment. Like, ooh, yeah, don't you do that. Not good. Don't like that. Your home has been invaded by robots. Mrs. Flood then makes a return. I have to say, compared to some, I wasn't amazingly impressed by this, but I was glad to see her being set up early in the season. I was slightly wary, or am slightly wary, of having a similar spot the returning character theme to that, which we did with Susan Twist or Triad or whatever was going on last season. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. It was one of those names. But the point is, I'm not immediately drawn to it as much as I maybe was last season, because it just feels like a bit of a repeat in that sense. However, I'm sure they're going to be doing it very well. We have, since shooting Shootigawa's first full-length episode, been seeing Mrs. Flood, so you could argue it's been a very ongoing process. Then Belinda flies off, TARDIS chasing her. There's this really cool time jump sequence, which we'll discuss a little bit more later, but it is really, really good. Then the Doctor finally makes an appearance. That was a personal highlight for me. His appearance as the historian, and then introducing the whole every 9 words thing the robots can't hear, was a really cool way of engaging the audience and really getting me into the episode, I found. I really, really like that, trying to listen along and try and predict the code, even though it was ultimately going to be spelled out to us. I thought it was really nice to be able to just engage the audience that little bit more. The action scene that then ensues that is really good. Although, I agree with the point made by quite a few others that a bit of character knowledge of the Doctor's friend, whose name I can't even remember, it's Sandra or something, would have been quite nice. Although this does sort of highlight the Doctor's desperation for a companion and further enforces Belinda's discussion at the end of the episode about him sort of just taking people on as adventures, it did just feel a little bit meaningless. Although I do think the tears were very much appropriate, and I'm not, this time round, and I'm not somebody who was generally, the Doctor shouldn't cry, I was generally okay with that. I did feel like a little bit more knowledge there would have been quite nice. Now, I love a good robot in sci-fi generally, and Scrub is no exception. Scrub is this little droid-like robot that just goes around going Scrub, and sounding a bit like the Norbot from the latest Wallace and Gromit film. Very, very good. Very, very like that. The conflict between Belinda and the Doctor is another highlight of this episode. Although I was a very big fan of Ruby Sunday as a companion, and think that an easily charmed companion was necessary to establish the Doctor in a new era of the show. You know, if you think about last season as a new era, similarly to how Chris Eccleston's one and only season was a new era of the show. If you are a part of that sort of train of thought, then I think it's quite necessary to, in order to properly set up the wonder that is ultimately associated with the Doctor, I think having a sort of quite on board companion that's happy to go along with this sort of thing is very necessary. You know, you can see, maybe not to quite such a degree as Ruby Sunday, but Rose would have been quite similar in that way. And although, you know, maybe a bit more friction might have been nice, and I would have wanted to see more Ruby Sunday and the Doctor together, I I thought Ruby Sunday was really good last season, but it's definitely fine to have a bit more conflict between characters now. Definitely very, very happy to see that. A lot of the conversation between Belinda and the Doctor really actually reminded me of some of the questions that were being asked at the end of David Tennant's era. And if Ncuti Gatwa really is leaving at the end of this season, which is looking pretty likely, not good. Not happy about that, but it is the way it is. Hey, we'll just have to wait and see. Then it's really good to be able to get some of those discussions in there. Really nice to see some of that stuff being discussed. I love the stuff, particularly at the end of Tennant's era, with things like the waters of Mars. Even Donna says you're dangerous, and I believe that's almost a near exact line that Belinda repeats there. So really, really like that. Editing Bendigo here, just to briefly touch on something that I really, or didn't really, in my initial recording of this while I was away on me hollybobs. It's the whole planet of the incels line, because that was one that was certainly discussed a lot in the media afterwards. Personally, I didn't mind it too much. I realised that some people might say it was a little heavy-handed, and in reality it isn't actually a planet of the incels. It's just, as somebody said on Reddit, they said, let me quote Reddit. What's weirder is that it's not a planet of incels. There's like one. He just happens to have a robot army. So that was somebody discussing on Reddit. Mike Torson was, I believe, the person who made the post. So there you go. But anyway, I didn't mind it too much. I realize it is a little heavy-handed. Really, the only big annoyance there is, well, for a start, I think it's good in a way that that it's being tackled, that topic and everything going on there, because it's certainly something that's being discussed a lot at the moment, and it's just another way of bringing Doctor Who back into the public consciousness, and I think that's a very good thing. The one thing that does frustrate me slightly is the fact that it just seems to, in basically all the reviews I read of this episode, at least in newspapers and stuff, seem to compare it to adolescence. And I don't really think that's a particularly fair comparison. Sure, they are dealing with slightly similar topics, but one is a sci-fi show and one is a really, really dark drama that's quite intense, realistic, and obviously there's a lot going on there. So I just thought that was a bit of an unfair comparison on the part of Doctor Who. Sure, it's very much something that's been discussed a lot at the moment, as it should be, but yeah, just the constant comparisons to that did wind me up slightly. Anyway, didn't mind that bit too much. On to the rest of the podcast. As for one of the most controversial points of the episode, I'm not talking about the planet of the incels thing. I didn't pay too much attention to that, to be honest. I barely noticed it. I saw some people talking about it. Go do what you want. Don't really care about that. But I'm talking about good old AI Alan. Woohoo! Now, although I'm by no means claiming to have predicted this, I did think it was a bit weird that 50 years in the future we're still going AI Alan. Yep, AI. Yep. His name, or is it 50 years in the future? It's timey-wimey, as the Doctor says to an unimpressed Belinda later in the episode. But anyway, I did think in this far futuristic atmosphere, it was a bit weird to be calling the massive AI generator that's sort of ruling over everything and being a bit of a dictator, calling it just the AI generator seemed a bit weird. May as well just call it ChatGPT or something. It's a bit weird. So that reveal of that being not the AI generator, but the Alan generator was quite nice. But I don't know. I don't exactly know how to feel about Alan on the whole, although I think that was quite well executed and I enjoyed the idea. I thought the entire concept for this episode, actually, I really feel that deserves a mention. The star thing, the play out and reveal with Alan, I thought that was a really, really good stuff. But I just felt like almost the episode couldn't quite make a decision on what it wanted us to think of Alan. Did they want us to feel sorry for him? It had that discussion again with every 9 words sort of making a return, and he's saying he's in pain, help me, that sort of thing. But equally, he's not doing great stuff. But then, the Doctor and Belinda, again, it's the example of the Doctor being, yes, I'm a very peaceful being, I'm super peaceful, and then like Alan is reduced to a sperm and an egg, which I was surprised they actually got that line in there, but they went for it. Okay. And then scrubbed like there's no tomorrow. So, yeah, certainly I felt like the episode couldn't quite decide where they wanted to go with Alan, how they wanted us to feel about him as a character. Should we be showing sympathy? Should we not? That is not the glaring issue with Alan for me, however. I think, I just for clarification, I do think they want us to lean more on the side of not feeling sympathy for Alan. He is again villain of the week slightly, but yeah, I appreciate nuancy, but it just felt like for an episode that felt at times not always super nuanced, and bits of the newer seasons haven't been particularly nuanced. I just thought, although I have loved the newer seasons, and that's not true the whole way around, but I just felt like it was a bit of a weird decision on that one. My biggest problem with AI Alan has to be, though, the fact, just that dialogue. The fact that as he is abducted by the aliens, he's sitting there playing his Call of Duty with his gamer headset on. And then he lands on the planet and he's all like, it's like a video game? And I can roll over it and be an awful person? Heck yeah. I just felt like that was a bit ridiculous. I'm not really sure who made the decision on. And I mean, I appreciate creative decisions, I really do, but I felt like it was really slamming gamers for no apparent reason. When Doctor Who team, they're proud nerds. I'm sure loads of them play video games, and certainly I think a lot of them appreciate it as an art form. So, like, what was the point they were trying to make there? Why couldn't Alan have been doing anything else, and you could have substituted that game of, like, I get he's a control freak, but does he necessarily need to be demonstrating that through playing video games? That's just my issue there. All in all, though, Dr. Shudigatwa, I feel we've almost stopped mentioning by this point as to just how good he is as the Doctor. He's perfect for the role, and if he does leave at the end of this season, I'm really going to be examining the quality of the stories that we've been given, because I think he is amazing as the Doctor. And if you want to have good enough writing, and the writing is very, very good, but you want to have good enough with Doctor Who, there's going to be some hits, some misses, some middles, as I like to think. So, ultimately, at the end of the day, if Shudigatwa only does 16 episodes, he's amazing as the Doctor. Not 16, it would be 18 because the Christmas specials and all that jazz. But anyway, if he only does 18 episodes, you won't be looking back at the quality and going, yeah, he was amazing as the Doctor and he got the stories he deserved. So, yeah, Shudigatwa, very, very good. Belinda Chandra, a really intriguing new character. Like seeing a bit more tension between the Doctor and his companion, as to how she's sort of going to turn into a companion. I don't know how they're going to round that story off for her. I don't know, because they're making very strong points here with the whole, doesn't want to be involved with this. You can't just charm Belinda into being a companion. I think those are all really interesting debates, but certainly, yeah, does that end with her just sort of being a bit like Martha, leaving off and sort of going off and sort of staying in touch with the character, or although Martha certainly had more of a liking toward the Doctor at the start, whereas Belinda isn't really showing that so far. Is she just going to end up as a companion and be like, you know what, I love travelling in time and space, you've charmed me over, or is she going to die? I hope not, but we'll have to wait and see. I would describe this, or I'd compare this episode similarly to, in many ways, the Donna Noble opening episode, not the Christmas one, but the one where she was sort of asserted as a firm companion, partners in crime. That's it. Because it's not dealing with anything. Well, I was going to say it's not dealing with anything super advanced, but this actually does take on a lot of good questions regarding the Doctor and AI and all this good stuff that they're talking about and dealing with pretty well, in my opinion. But it's not the best episode of Doctor Who. It's not like, wow, what an episode. It's not amazing. It's no 73 yards. It's no, take your fancy of a really, really, really good Doctor Who episode that just get it all right and hit a 10 out of 10. I would say both this episode, The Robot Revolution, and Partners in Crime both achieve a really, really nice 8 out of 10, but an almost perfect 8 out of 10. Like, there's very little. It's just the concept and that sort of thing. Although the concept was very strong here, it's just like, it's a series opener. It's not a massive finale. It's not. It needs to open the series, and as such, it's not going to be. To my mind, it's not going to be a massive, big 10 out of 10, but it does achieve, just as Partners in Crime did, a perfect 8 out of 10. Very quickly, before we round up the episode, I also want to discuss that cliffhanger, because it looks like, well, something's stopping Belinda getting back from that date in time. There's a lot of theories going around at the moment about the reality war. Is the Doctor going to realise he's in a TV show? Again, we've got Rylan, Graham Norton. They're going to be appearing as themselves in the Eurovision episode. So we'll just have to wait and see, are the borders between Doctor Who and our universe collapsing in show? We will have to wait and see. Earth is obviously gone. The Doctor has failed to notice that. And yeah, it's timey-wimey. It's going to take us the long way round, but from what I've seen so far, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you very, very much for listening. I've been Bentico Blue. This has been the Snack Break podcast presenting the new Whovian. It's been Huncapper production. See you soon. Stay safe. If this is probably the last episode before Easter, have a nice Easter. Bye.